Awesome.
You still in Utah, sir?
Yep. Just south of Salt Lake City.
Nice. How's the weather been out
Awesome.
there?
Man, disappointingly dry.
Yeah.
We're hoping in the forecast we've got some moisture coming this Thursday and Friday and next Thursday, Friday. So hopefully they're big storms. We need it.
Do you ski at all, snowboard?
Yeah, I grew up doing both. Currently do some skiing. My kids all have passes. I'm about 15 minutes from the ski lift at Sundance.
Okay, cool.
Well, speaking of Sundance, why don't you let everyone know where we can find you, what you have coming out that they can look forward to you to? I know you might have something that's going to be in Sundance that kind of just rung a bell in my head.
Yeah, actually, we it's the release of our newest documentary. It's the sequel to Iron Cowboy 1. It's Iron Cowboy 2. This one's called Conquer 100. And it's the journey of 100 consecutive Ironmans, all done here in Utah. An Ironman a day for a quarter of a year. March 27th is the red carpet premiere. And then after that, it'll hit all the streaming platforms.
And let everyone know where they can follow you, where they can find you. Let them know about the Iron Grit camps that you have.
Yeah, so all information can always be found on our website, ironcowboy.com. And I'm most active on Instagram, which is Iron Cowboy James. And super pumped this year, we're doing some retreats, the Iron Grit experiences. And I've just recognized that after going around the world and speaking on stages, um, people want to become more mentally tough. And they ask that question, how do I become more mentally tough? And my answer is through experiences. And then I quickly recognized that people can't conjure up their own experiences to where they develop that mental toughness. And that's when the Iron Grit experiences were born. And so our first one is going to be, well, first one of 2024 will be at Sundance, Utah. And then we're going to be in San Diego, California. And then we'll finish the year on a private British island just off the coast of Florida.
Very cool. Very cool. So, James, a little bit of a through line. I like to do this with all our guests, kind of how, like Jimmy said, how we came to find you and make some connections and just kind of bring the world closer together. As you know, as we get older, we find it becomes a lot smaller and smaller. So, um, COVID happened, and as for a lot of people, the world shut down, and we were all kind of sitting around, and our lives changed, and so a lot of people were meeting on Zooms and doing different things. And so what we did with two of our cousins is we started having a Saturday meetup, and that because we had already been podcasting for a while, that kind of turned into an offshoot podcast with cousins, and it was kind of like a men's club, book club kind of thing, if you will. We weren't necessarily reading books, but we were watching things, and we would throw out topics and add to the watch list. And I'm an ultra marathoner. I'm a three-time Leadville 100 finisher, and one of our cousins is a cyclist. So he mentioned your documentary. So we dug into that, and after we consumed that and talked about that, then we did a bigger deep dive and discovered that you were a wrestler. Jimmy and I are both former wrestlers. Jimmy took it a little bit further and wrestled in college. I went into the running route. So we had that connection. And then as we're preparing for this, I also dove into your first book, your Audible, and discovered that you went to Utah Valley. And so, a friend of a podcast, Coach Greg Williams, the Utah Valley wrestling coach, has been a guest with us. So we're fans of Utah Valley wrestling. And then also, when you did your chapter about New Jersey, Jimmy and I are originally from New Jersey, not too far from Monmouth County. We grew up in the county south of Monmouth County, which is Ocean County. Spent some time doing some races in early 2000s with the Sandy Hookers. So I'm very, very familiar with that. And then your ambassador, when you said was a triathlon coach named Brian who has a Jeep. I'm only assuming that that is Brian Shea, who is a friend of mine. I've known Brian since the early 90s, and he actually got me kind of into triathlons when I started doing that. So that's a little bit of a through line for me. And then Jimmy's got in some additional stuff he wants to throw at you too.
Yeah, so huge pro wrestling fan. And you mentioned Stampede Wrestling that
Yeah,
you grew up watching on Friday nights, and you also mentioned WrestleMania 2 on
yeah.
Wrestling Changed My Life podcast. And I kind of noticed you didn't want to get too deep into it because that wasn't that kind of wrestling podcast, but we want to dive into that on the Airey Bros. I want
Let's
to
go.
add I want to ask you what you remember about WrestleMania 2. If I'm correct, WrestleMania 2 is in three different locations. So I'm curious what location that you went to.
Yeah, so man, it's so nostalgic for me. In fact, I have still in my possession the collection in its entirety of the rubber LJN wrestlers.
Let's
Um,
go.
the entire thing. I'm talking ring, cages, every character. It's something that I'll probably never sell. And I love that it's the part of my growing up. I got to go to Calgary or the Calgary Stampede wrestling every Friday night. And then Saturday, I would sit in front of my TV and I'd watch an hour of Stampede wrestling that I just watched the night before live, and then WWF. So 2 straight hours. I know the Hart Boys. I've been in the pit at the Hart compound. Um, my dad was a firefighter, and one of the brothers, Keith Hart, was also a firefighter. And then there was obviously Bret Hart and Owen Hart and Jim the Anvil Knight Hart, who's a brother-in-law. Um, my my dad brought me backstage with Keith Hart because of that firefighter connection, and I got to meet Andre and Hulk and all these guys back in the day. And as a 12-year-old, like it was so impactful to me. Like I had no idea this wasn't real, and every Friday night, like I was all in. I mean, Honky Tonk Man and Chris Benoit and all these guys, Bad News Brown, all these guys came from Stampede Wrestling into the WWF, and so it was this massive feeding ground. And I just got to go every Friday night. My uncle would pick me up in his like rusted out Toyota truck, just so nostalgic. He would light up a cigarette, so that the smell of a freshly lit cigarette reminds me of wrestling back in those days. But I just loved it, and it's really what then gravitated me towards Olympic style wrestling, freestyle wrestling, which I fell in love with and did for 7 years. And I believe it was the foundation to my mental toughness, those wrestling days, and just really turned me into the man I am today. And I attribute a ton of my success to my wrestling days, and just reminiscing. So the WrestleMania 2, they did a live broadcast, and so one of them was in Calgary, and so I got to go to that live broadcast. But it was like it was real, massive screens, everything. It was as if you were there. And a buddy of mine, one of the wingmen, Casey, he's big into it, so anytime WWE rolls into town, we go. And the goal this year in 2024 is to go to WrestleMania.
All right. Well, a couple follow-ups on that. Sorry, Rich, I'm gonna stay on the pro wrestling for a little bit, but being from Calgary and that being Hart country, is he like a national hero where you're from? Is he a big deal from where you're from, or was that kind of made a little bit bigger because that's what they do in pro wrestling?
No, he really is. Like he especially in Calgary. I mean, just that the Hart family, Stu Hart, Bret Hart, all those guys. It was tragic when Owen died. I mean, it just rippled through the whole city and all of Canada. I mean, they were just hometown heroes, and nation heroes, really. Um, just iconic figures, that didn't care, which I love, and we're just living through passion. In fact, I love that social media algorithms feed you what you consume. And I get to see all the 80s wrestling stuff all the time in the clips and all that, because it's stuff that I've like started to click on. And I love every day I'll consume like some of the old like big time matches like Ultimate Warrior and just like all the iconic guys. And I'll sit there and watch a 30-second video and I'm just like, damn, man, I love that stuff. So I grew up on it, and they were hometown heroes for sure.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Well, sticking with the pro wrestling theme, James, I'm curious, have you seen Iron Claw yet?
I haven't, and in fact, I didn't even know it was happening until I saw a picture of Zach Efron yesterday on social media, just yoked out, and I was like, "This is definitely." I'm not a big movie guy, but I'm like, I am going to consume that movie this year. I think it'll be really cool. Von Erickson was obviously one of the big characters back in the day, and it'll just be interesting to see what they how they portray him and his career. And I'm just always fascinated when actors can completely transform their bodies. Like Zach looks jacked in this
Saucy.
movie. I'm just fascinated in terms of like body transformations and whatnot, and how he does that role. So I'm definitely going to watch it 100%.
Awesome. Yeah. Jimmy and I aren't really necessarily movie guys either, but we had Marshall and Ross on the podcast as well. So we had to pay homage to them and their family and went and saw it last week. It's good. It's sad, obviously you know the story. So but I guess I'm curious, who do you follow now? Who are your big who are you a fan of these days in the ring? Or do you stick to the old school guys?
Man, I really just stick to the old school guys. It's just lost a little bit of the luster for me in terms of like the showmanship and the characters. It's just not the same. And so I've kind of more gravitated towards MMA, and watching these guys do it at a high level. Back then it was massive entertainment for me. I don't find the same entertainment in what they're doing today. Um, Kind of it started to go downhill for the lack of a better term, kind of when The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin and whatnot, after those guys is kind of when it started to slide for me. And then that's when it really when MMA was starting to take off and these guys became more real to me in terms of their athleticism, just their incredible range of skill sets that they have. But I will admit it's been fun to watch someone like Logan Paul come in and watch some of his matches because he's brought back in a level of athleticism that I believe was lost in just like characters and chaos and nonsense and whatever they were doing. But like if you watch some of the clips that Logan's matches, man, that dude is impressive in terms of like his athletic ability and what they're doing. It's just been fun to watch.
Who do you like in MMA these days?
Dude, there's a lot of great characters right now. But I've been to the last couple fights that Usman did. Then he lost, and then I just recently watched Patty take down
Tony.
yeah. And just what a fight. And it's just fun to see that character develop. Patty's quickly become one of my guys to follow. The Connor just announced April of I think it's April of 2024.
Yeah.
And I've told all my friends if they officially announce that, I don't care where in the world it is, I'm gonna go live. I just think it'd be really cool to see him, the energy that arena is filled with. I love any athlete at a high level that changed the way a sport is played, the financial side of things that come because of an athlete. And Connor, like him, love him, hate him, or what, I don't care. He changed the pay scale for MMA and call it a character, but he brings a unique character to the landscape of fighting. He brings a unique energy. It doesn't matter who he's fighting; it will be the highest pay-per-view that year. So I'm super excited. They're finally going to put him on a card again, win, lose, or draw. I want to go see him fight live.
So you bring up being an MMA fan, and I know you had an MMA fight. Did that scratch the itch for you for being obviously you're a super competitive guy, but grew up wrestling? Did that scratch the itch for you? You still training?
So it was a straight boxing, USA boxing
All
fight.
right.
And I loved it, and it really brought me back to my wrestling days. I knocked him out in 33 seconds, which was absolutely electric. It's hard to describe that. I just have one. I'm getting older. I'm turning 48 this year, and I've had multiple concussions, and I'm finally on the other side of that through a lot of work and therapy. At this point in my life, it's just not worth it. But man, if MMA and combat sports would have been what it is today when I was coming out of high school and college and wrestling and all that, I definitely would have gone down that road because it's just so fun. It's so electric. And they're wired different. And I don't know that I'm fully wired different like they are, but I am a little bit out there. And having the opportunity to revisit it and get in the ring this year, or the beginning part of last year was incredible. And it did fire me up and spark something in me. But then I quickly recognized, like, you're not as young as you once were, and it's maybe not the best idea, and that you can go chase some other pursuits and keep your brain intact.
Fighting the young man's game.
It is for sure.
You mentioned Patty is a guy you follow and like his style and stuff. I'm curious, as an endurance athlete, did you have any thoughts on Tony having David Goggins in his camp?
um, oh man, I'm not the biggest David Goggins fan.
Me either.
I just, good for him and what he's been able to do. I just strongly disagree, and we don't align on many things, meaning community, family, compassion. And I gotta give him a little bit of grace in terms, like, part of it's got to be an act. And I've never, met him face to face. I've seen him. We've spoken at a lot of the same events together. I've last minute filled in for him when he wasn't able to do so. I get compared to him a lot. We just don't align on certain things, and I haven't really seen anything that I'm like, wow, this dude impresses me. And I know that's going to be insanely controversial. But it's the fact that, show me one thing that he's done that nobody else has done. I mean, thousands of people run 200 milers. And in fact, I just finished watching an amazing documentary on World War II, where they recolorized it. It's on Netflix right now. And in the final episode, when the war is about to come to end, there was this prisoner camp, and it was mostly women. And they took these women and they made them march like 300 plus miles, and then locked them in a warehouse that they set up a bomb that was going to blow up to kill them all. And I'm, you see a lot of these people that are just like Goggins. Okay, great, you ran 240 miles. These women with zero preparation, terrible conditions, went and did 300 in the worst imaginable conditions. That's impressive. Like that to me is like, you guys are in a league of your own. So I have respect for David, but we just simply don't align on community, on family, and the way that we would motivate and encourage other people. We just don't align at all.
Amen. I wholeheartedly agree with everything.
I tried to keep that as politically correct as I
I
can.
love it. I have a friend who refers to him as a motivational cursor.
That's very accurate.
I think a lot of people say that it resonates with them, but face to face, when you actually talk to them the way that he talks, they cower, and they're like, "What? You can't say that sort of stuff." And it's like, well, exactly. Like, no one wants to be talked to like that. So, like, I'm not going to get the most out of my athletes by having that sort of attitude or that approach. And like you said, I respect what he's done, but I also know, single parents that get up at 3:30 in the morning so they can get their training done and run 100-mile races or run 200-mile races and do the exact same thing. It's just, he's found his niche, and he's met the right people that have helped promote him, and he's gotten where he is. I respect what he's done, but have a 3-hour faster Leadville time than him. So
yeah, no offense to anybody that's single with any kids. It's a lot easier when then you're the only person that you have to focus on. And I don't think the majority of people can relate to him because he's an isolationist, and he's an extremist, and he only has to worry about himself. And that's not a character fault. That's just who he is, and the environment that he's created for himself. But like you just said, I have so much more respect for the single parent who gets up and then crushes times, and does it out of pure passion, and believes in community and helping other people out. It's just, like I said, we just align differently, and I'm way more impressed by so many other people doing greater things with greater adversity and challenges in front of them, and a more difficult current life situation than he has. He has it very, very comfortable now. And he did go through it. I have a lot of compassion for his upbringing. I'm by no means demeaning any of that. And he's done a great job at marketing. But I'm way more impressed by many other people.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Go ahead, Jim.
James, you have said that you don't do things to prove people wrong. You do things to prove yourself right. So on that same topic of what we were just talking about, did you have a moment where you realized you had to change that and make it positive and not dwell on the negative to prove people right or wrong?
Yeah, to me, the end result is the same. I'm just a big believer in energy and what we're putting out there. And again, back to the conversation, everything he does, in my opinion, is to prove other people wrong. To go out there, and that's negative, and he comes across as very negative and very angry and all those things. And to me, the end result becomes the same, but how it feels to me is very different. And like I said, you're right. I'm trying to prove myself right. I'm trying to find my personal limits and potential and not compare myself to anybody else. And at the end of the day, the greatest gift, and to me, the goal of life, is to get to a place where you frankly don't care what anybody else thinks. And that's actually one of his best attributes. If he's truthful with it, he doesn't care what anybody thinks. And that in itself is a gift that I wish everybody would internalize, because that's ultimately what's holding everybody back, is that comparison thing. And really, it doesn't matter what anybody else is doing. If you're showing up with honesty and integrity and pushing boundaries every single day and trying to improve, then that's truly what matters.
Yeah, that's very well said. I'm curious, talking about that positivity and the energy and all that stuff. You mentioned in the book, another book called The Messages from the Body.
Yeah.
And, Jimmy and I talk about this oftentimes. We follow another gentleman named Paul Chek, who's a health practitioner, and he talks about how, your hurt ankle is connected to your issues with your parents or whatever. So I was wondering if you could maybe touch on that book a little bit, and then also maybe sort of the emotional connections that we don't necessarily always associate to our aches and pains, and maybe some of our injuries when we're doing some of these ultra endurance events.
Yeah, so great, and absolutely controversial in terms of what this conversation is going to probably turn into. And so, just as a precursor, everybody has their own experiences, everybody has their own belief systems. This is mine. And I believe that every physical ailment that we encounter is directly associated to an emotion, experience, or trauma that we've had in the past. And it doesn't matter how much therapy, or meaning physical therapy or body work or anything we do, until we address the emotions, that physical ailment is going to keep presenting itself. People wonder why they have chronic pain. It's because they're only dealing with the physical component of that and not the emotional component that relieves the trauma from the past, so we can forgive ourselves and start creating new experiences. And so, yeah, the book Messages from the Body is a brilliant book. There's obviously been many renditions of it. And in its essence, you can say it was like my right index finger. I'm having problems with it. You can go to the book and look up right index finger, and there will be a paragraph, and you'll read that paragraph, and something from that will resonate to you if you do some soul searching. And then you can go back to the moment or the incident that happened that is in direct correlation to that pain. And I'll give you guys a very shortened version of a very long story. When I was dating my wife, she had incredibly bad eczema on her hands, like little white head pimples, and very painful, like we couldn't even hold hands. And my mom grew up, teaching us kids and practicing this emotional therapy and release. And my mom met my wife for the first time while we were dating and said, "Oh, I can fix your hands." And she goes, "No, we've been on every steroid cream. No doctor can fix it." And she goes, "Oh, that's because it's emotional." And my wife was like, "Okay, you're crazy, whatever." And then my wife and I said, "Look, just trust my mom. This is something that you should explore." And anyway, she started doing this emotional therapy and release with my mom, and her hands cleared up. And no steroid cream, no nothing. And it was just addressing the issues that were directly correlated to her hands. And we married 23 years and hasn't had any issues with her hands since. but dealt with it her entire life prior to dealing with the emotional component. And another great example would be The Biggest Loser, the show, TV show. 99.9% of those people put the weight back on, and the reason is because they never dealt with the actual reason why they experienced that weight gain, and they were only dealing with the physical piece of it. And to be honest with you, it's my secret sauce. That's why I'm able to do the big challenges that I do, is because anytime a physical ailment comes up, we address the emotional side of it, try to quickly as we can get on the other side of it, and then do what we can to heal the physical part of it so that we can continue on. And so during the big challenges that we've done, the multiple world records, the 50 Ironmans, 50 states, 50 days, the 100 consecutive, the entire time I'm doing emotional therapy work with my mom, with my wife, addressing any of the physical ailments that are showing up and getting on the other side of that so I can continue on and be successful.
And is that, you mentioned your mom working with your wife and that sort of stuff. Is there a connection to your faith with that? I feel like I'm not well versed that much with the Mormon faith and all that, but I do know that there is some sort of like originally there was some sort of like holistic connection with that, if I'm correct.
So Mormon church, whatever you want to call it, it's a Christian faith base. And it's just, you have to be able to separate religion and the confounds of that, and then spirituality. And I think true spirituality, there is a connection to a higher being, and it's our gift to be able to navigate those emotions and those feelings and the spirit, to navigate it all successfully. Really, one of the biggest questions I get is what I do more physical, or is it more mental? And the reality is it's got to be 100% physical and 100% mental, but neither of those matter if it's not under the umbrella of spirituality. And you can kind of put spirituality and the emotional side of stuff, meaning our energy, into one category. So whatever your belief system is, whether you call it energy or spirituality or whatever it is, that's got to be the most powerful piece of the whole puzzle. Because if you just say, look, I'm the most physical person on the planet, I've got incredible gifts. Well, if you're mentally weak, I don't care how physically strong you are. And if you're the most mentally strong person on the planet, but you're 300 pounds or obese or whatever it is, and very unhealthy and diabetes and heart, I don't care how mentally strong you are, you can't drag this broken body through whatever the physical challenge you're trying to do it. And so you've got to be 100% physical, 100% mental, and then it's got to be underneath that umbrella of spirituality or energy. And that's the perfect formula, in my opinion.
James, as we like to say, you are speaking our language, sir. We are all about the body and spirit being one. And one thing you bring up, I've heard you say, is a phrase called catastrophism. And catastrophizing, I'm sorry. And it kind of goes back to that mental training. And just to break it down for our audience, it's pretty much worrying about step 20 when you're on step 1. How do you reel it back in for yourself and mitigate those issues when you got something going on, and worry about the step that you're on and not worry about step 20?
Yeah. So catastrophizing is ego. And ultimately it's looking into the future, worst case scenario, and then giving it all of our power and all of our attention. And ultimately that's distracting you from progress and getting to where you need to be. And on the flip side of that coin, living in the past and feeling regret and remorse for the poor decisions that we've made is equally as crippling. And so people need to understand the present moment is the most important time. And really, it's the only time when we truly have any power. And if we continue to live in the past in regret and fear, and that's going to stop us. So we have to figure out how to forgive ourselves. And that's the whole emotional therapy that we're talking about, that mind and body connection. You've got to forget, you've got to figure out how to overcome the trauma and past errors you've made in order to be able to progress forward. And then you can't go too far, and you start looking into the future and start having that worry and that doubt. And now that's going to also cripple you from going, because you're worried about step 12 when you have to worry about step 1. And so this concept is easy for me. I call it being perfect for 1 second. And I don't care how depressed or filled with anxiety and depression Whatever you're thinking, you're going to magnify. And even when you're in your darkest moments, you're backed into the corner, you feel like it's absolutely impossible. You can be perfect for 1 second, right? We can all shift the way we're thinking and be perfect for 1 second. We can all show up and rise to the occasion for 1 second. And then if that's true, just do it for another second until you gain the confidence, momentum to continue to do it for longer periods of time. Life happens in peaks and valleys. And when we're on a peak, it's easy. When we're in the valley, it's difficult. But it, all peaks and valleys come to pass. And so we just have to be perfect for short enough periods of time and gain that knowledge and experience to start to be on that rise, that climb again. And then we're going to hit that peak, and that peak is that ease part, and then our perception experience changes, and then natural things happen, and we hit a dip again, and that's an opportunity for us to learn and grow. And so really catastrophizing it's doing a disservice to us all. And the two things that I try to encourage people to do is to forgive themselves for their past and to stop living so far in the future that it's stealing all of your power from being successful and moving the needle and focusing on the one thing that matters today, which is progress.
Yeah, I am not quite the ultra athlete as you and Rich, but I've dabbled a little bit. And in when I attempted 100 miles one time, I had that exact thing. I was on mile 25. I'm worrying about mile 50. I'm on mile 50. I'm worrying about mile 100. I never get there, right? And you start it in your head instead of enjoying those miles that you got in. So when you were talking, I forget what podcast I was listening to you on, but you were talking about how you looked at your wife. I believe it was when you were doing the 100 Iron Cowboy distance triathlons, when you said to your wife, I don't know how I'm gonna do this many more, and she just said, "You're done. Just finish today, and you're done. We'll get you done what needs to get done," and that changed everything for you. And I had that light bulb moment on, and I was like, "Oh, that's where like all the meditation that I'm doing now. That's where all that comes in. It comes in that ability to be able to focus right now."
Yeah, it was on day 15 of the 100, and by day 5 I had started to develop some stress fractures, and man, I was staring down the barrel of 95 more to go. And by day 15, I remember coming home and blacking out several times during the marathon and just figuring out how to get to the finish line that night. And I got home and I was just a mess. And I looked at my wife and I just said, I don't think I can manage that level of pain for 85 more days. And she's just so smart. And she was just like, you don't have to. And I was like, what do you mean I don't have to? I committed to do 100 of these stupid things. And she goes, you just have to do one thing. And I'm like, oh man, what is it? And she's like, you just have to show up tomorrow and start, because we have no idea when the next miracle is going to happen. And I find that with our lives to be so true. And if we focus on a futuristic event that we have no idea, we just have to get up tomorrow and start, because we're going to meet somebody. We're going to encounter something. We're going to gain a different perspective or knowledge because we're showing up. And that completely changes the trajectory of what we're doing and how we're navigating it. And so it truly was the greatest gift when she said, we don't know when the next miracle is going to happen, and you won't find out unless you continue to show up. And the only way to guarantee to not find out is to quit today. And I was like, okay, I can control starting today. And as soon as I shifted my focus to just that, it completely changed the trajectory of every single day. And I just had to have the belief that a miracle was going to happen that would completely change what we were doing. And it did, of course. It happened. A gentleman showed up on the trail and he said, hey, I'm the world leading manufacturer of carbon plated shin braces. Will you try one? He's like, I live on this trail. And I'm like, you live on this trail? Where have you been for 2 weeks? And but it was the miracle that we were waiting for. And we got this brace to fit me, and it offloaded my shin and allowed me to continue at a slow pace, but allowed me to continue. And while doing 140.6 miles a day, my body adapted and it started to heal under duress, because as I continued to show up, I was sending my brain a message that I'm still coming. I'm still showing up every single day. And your brain starts to receive those messages, and it adapts, it evolves, it changes to match the new norm of what it's experiencing. And I think that's what a lot of people don't do, is they experience that pain or discomfort, whether it's in the form of anxiety or depression, and they don't believe a miracle is coming. And it cripples them, and they stop, and they're right on the cusp of overcoming that and experiencing that adaptation to where doing an Ironman a day becomes normal, and it's the current reality of what you're doing. And most people quit way before that because they don't have that understanding that it's only through showing up that your body will adapt and evolve.
James, I'm curious. I've done 4 100-mile races, and it's always the first marathon that is the hardest, just because of the magnitude of the event. And then it gets to a certain point where it clicks, and I know, okay, I got this. Curious, in that course of either the 50 or the 100, did you get to a point where you knew before, like day 50 or day 100, like it's in the bag, I got this, I have to just keep showing up? Or is that the mindset from day one?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the mindset from day one is to keep showing up, but there was two major turning points or pivot points during both those campaigns. I can definitely point to day 30 on the 50. I was in Connecticut, legit, like so frustrated, so much pain, so much fatigue. Just got off my bike and just was like, this isn't worth it. I don't know how to do 20 more. And that's when it was just like, you can be perfect for 1 second. You can turn the pedals over one time. You can take one more step. And truly, I had to let go of trying to control everything, every element of the campaign, and start to trust in my team. And as soon as I did that, I had the realization that I could be perfect for 1 second, and that I had a team behind me, and to not try to micromanage everything. Everything changed. And those last 20 were my fastest of all 50. And then same thing with the 100. I was dealing with so many complications. I had to be so hyper focused on just that moment in order to survive. By about day 80, it was probably 81, that I was like, this is a formality at this point. And as long as I just keep showing up, as long as I'm staying focused on the task at hand, this is 1,000% in the bag.
And for the 100, did you do the same route every day?
Yes, and from the outside looking in, people will be like, man, that would be so mind-blowingly exhausting to do the same course every single day. The level of boredom that would come in would be crippling. And there was that element to it, but it got to the point where it started to not be crippling, but in fact, it was building confidence. I knew every single day was going to be the same. And I had the knowledge that I did this yesterday. And so why can't I do it today? And it just got so familiar with the course and the route. I mean, I was pointing out potholes to the other riders before we were on top of them. I mean, I knew every corner. I found myself checking out. And if you guys ever driven somewhere, like you get there and you're like, oh man, how did I get here? And
All the
it's just
time.
because yeah, exactly. And you just, you become unconsciously conscious. And that's where we got to in the 100, to where it became this sense of comfortable, and this sense of familiarity, to where it really started to build my confidence, saying, I just did this yesterday. Like, why can't I do it today? And so it turned from being this negative, repetitive, boring, mind-numbing activity to one where it started to bolster my confidence, and actually created momentum and familiarity around that course.
So when you did the 101, that was like nothing because you had already put 100 in, and on that same course it was nothing. And does that kind of go back to your beliefs? Because you said you felt like you had something tell you had to do that extra day, and you were like, no, come on, I don't want to do that extra day. But is that the faith that you have, knowing that that was something you had to do?
Yeah, I think one of the disservices that people do on their own journey is they don't listen to their intuition. And I think the greatest regret that individuals are going to have is to get to the end of their time on this earth. That's a blink of an eye, and regret the moments that they didn't listen to their intuition and take action on those moments. And early in the campaign, wingman Casey, he was like, dude, we should just do like 101, not tell anybody, just me, Casey, and Aaron. And I was like, you shut your dirty whore mouth right now. We are not doing that. Because I was like on day 8, 9, or 10. And he was like, oh man, it'd be so cool. And I'm like, you're off this project if you bring that up ever again. And then by day like 95, I was like, hey, Casey, you remember early when you said we should do one more? I was like, I think we should. And it's interesting the way our perspective or perception changes, because in the first 10 I was like, there's no way I can conceptualize doing one more. And then when I was on day 95, the perspective changes and it's like, what's one more, right? And so it really depends on where we are in our journey to how we look at something. The day 101 was always day 101. It wasn't any it was just what it was, day 101. But it was my perception about that day and where I was on my journey that made it either impossible or plausible. And it was all how I looked at it through the lens that I was looking. And it's fascinating to hear the two sentences. I can't conceptualize one more to what's one more. And it all had everything to do with where I was on my journey and what I believed was possible during those times.
When I've heard you talk about that, I couldn't even wrap my head around that. But after talking to you a little bit, I just can see and hear what you're made out of and get, oh, that makes perfect sense. That's something James would do. And one thing you say a lot, and this is the same mantra Rich and I have. It's a little bit different, but your mantra is just show up. And our mantra is 80% of success is just showing up. But you mentioned that little magical ingredient, and that's intent, the intent you put into it. How do you, before you go into an endeavor, before you go into a task, or whether it be a new room or another part of your day, do you have something you say to yourself to put that intent in to make that special and make sure you're there?
I just always try to tie emotion to anything I do. Because if you're just going into something like flippantly and you're not really connected to the journey, it's going to be super easy to back out or quit or shift or pivot or go a different direction. And it's interesting because I've got 5 kids and they're getting older, and they're actually my oldest daughter's getting married this month, which is super exciting. But I'm not worried about my kids at all because they understand showing up. They understand putting in the work. They understand not making excuses. And as I look around the landscape of this generation, I'm like, I'm not worried about my kids at all because most kids aren't showing up. I'll just share this too. I shared this on another podcast, but my daughter was a supervisor for lifeguards at the pool. And I don't know how old you guys are, but back when I was working as a teenager, if I even thought about not showing up to my job, I got fired. Um, and as a supervisor, she came home and she was like, oh man, 3 people didn't show up for their shift today. And I was like, oh man, that sucks. They just lost their jobs. And she was like, oh no, you can do no call, no show 3 times before you get fired. And I was like, are you freaking kidding me? You cannot show up, not call, have 0 responsibility, no accountability for the impact it's having on other people, and you don't get fired. And it's just the whole testament of like, it's shocking that just showing up is the new standard of excellence. And it's almost embarrassing that's what it is. And the fact that my kids are willing to show up, regardless if they feel like it or not, they just have that level of respect for themselves and who they're doing things for. Like it's shocking that just showing up is a leveling up. We're back in the day, like that was just a bare minimum.
Yeah. It's crazy, James, with the documentary, when we first watched the documentary, everyone is so young. And so to hear you say that, your kids are all grown up, you have a daughter who's about to get married it's crazy how fast time goes. But, the Buttery Bros did a video with you. And at the end of that video, they said, what do you want to be remembered for? And you said, I want to be remembered for being a dad. So I'm curious, how impactful is it to have the family along on this journey and have their support, but then also talking about how you've got them to do more than just showing up. I'm just sitting here listening to everything that you're saying. I'm like, man, this guy is a rock solid dad. So I will remember you for being an amazing athlete, but hearing you talk and hearing what you said to the Buttery Bros, it's very impactful. So I appreciate all that you do, and not that I have seen anything, but I know that you've done a great job raising your children.
Yeah, thank you. And one of the greatest compliments I get is the relationship that people see from the outside with my kids, and it's not fake. It's very real. And I say from stage all the time, like, I don't want to be known for the 50 or the 100 or the 101 or running across Greece or biking the top of Kilimanjaro. I want to be known as the hero in my home. And again, I don't care what anybody thinks. I care what these five kids think. I care what my wife thinks. And it's my job, my duty, my responsibility to get them ready for life. And that's through enforcing natural consequences. And the hardest part about parenting is to watch them stumble, fall, and not help them back up, and encourage them and guide them and counsel them and give them grounding principles to live their lives by. And man, I am so thrilled. We were heavily criticized in 2015 when we did the 50 for doing this challenge in June and July, the two hottest months of the summer. But I refused to do it any other time. It's when my kids were out of school, and it's when they could be part of this journey. My oldest daughter is the CEO of my company now, runs every aspect of it. And it's just such a gift and a blessing to watch my kids. I love watching footage from the first documentary to the documentary that's coming out this March. It's so fun to watch them grow and evolve through this process of being involved with our challenges. They aren't bystanders in what we do. They are active participants, both in training, in understanding, in sacrificing, in participating in the reward and the upside of these challenges. Like, they've seen and watched and participated in every act along the way, and it's just so fun to watch them blossom as adults now, and take a lot of the things that my wife and I have tried to instill in them in terms of like showing up and discipline and choosing the path of resistance, not the path of least resistance, but the path of resistance, so that they can choose to be comfortable or uncomfortable at any given time. And it's just been the greatest gift as a parent to have these kids have a front row seat to our intentional suffering.
With that said, I'm curious, was it tough for you when your son decided that wrestling wasn't for him? A little bit.
It was way hard. He committed to 1 year. He did it, and he was good, but it just wasn't his passion. And I think a lot of parents do an insane disservice to their children when they make them pursue the parent's passion. And my kid, his name's Quinn. He loves lacrosse and he loves basketball. Who am I to make him wrestle when he has other passions? Now, I will say this: he is taking jujitsu and some MMA, and he has to do it for an entire year. I don't care if he likes it. It's just something he has to do. If I could create a universal law, it would be every young person, male and female, either has to do 2 years of combat fighting or 2 years of military service. I just think they will grow self-respect. They will grow discipline. They will grow confidence. There's so many benefits that come from it. Now, I'm allowing him to pursue his own passions and pursuits, but I'm also allowing him to experience some discomfort. And the fact that he actually doesn't like it, I love even more, because it's not me having him chase down one of my passions. It's me teaching him discipline and self-respect, and doing something that's frankly hard. And I think at the end of this year, he'll be a better man. He'll be a better individual. He'll be a better athlete. He'll be a better sibling. He'll be a better son to his mother. And it's all going to be because of sports and athleticism. And I don't care that he doesn't like it. He's doing it.
You got him training with Jeremy Horn out there?
I have met Jeremy Horn. I wanted to meet up with him a couple times to get ready for my boxing fight. I'm good friends with Uriah Faber, and so we're gonna go out to there and roll around the mat with him a couple times. He's just a good friend and just a solid dude. But yeah, Jeremy Horn lives probably about 40 minutes from me.
Okay, yeah. Outdoor Retailer used to do their show in Salt Lake City, and
Okay.
I worked for a company back in the day when I was out there, and I was kind of when Jeremy was one of the premier guys fighting, and I sought him out. I went, everyone in the company was going to dinner. I'm like, I'm going to roll with Jeremy. It was actually right before Joe Riggs fought Nick Diaz.
Okay.
Um, but
Yeah, dude, a lot of people don't know Jeremy Horn, but dude's a legend and one of the
yeah,
toughest SOBs out there. Like he had no, dude, he had such a chin, and was so technical, but it was just early on in the fight game. And I think had he rolled on the scene today, he would have, he would shock some people. And he's just a tremendous athlete. He understands the nuances of the sport. In fact, the guy that put on the promoter that did our put on our boxing event here in Utah, he's actually releasing something that's called FightCon. And it's going to be like Comic-Con or a lot of these different big conventions, but it's all the fight game. And I think it's going to do really, really well. I'm excited for him to release that. And I think the first one will be here in Utah. So if you guys are curious, keep an eye out for that. And I think it'll be something really cool. Just bring back bring everybody into one arena. And I bet you they set up like jiu-jitsu tournaments and a bunch of really cool different stuff around it.
very cool. And then touching on what you said about you want to make it a mandate that everyone should do some military service or some fight training. I spent quite a few years working in retail, and I always said that, someday I want to write a book about how retail it made me a better person, make me more compassionate, make me more empathetic. I would say my thing, I was saying, military service or something like the Peace Corps, or working like 2 or 4 years in retail or in service industry. I think it should be something that should be required of all American citizens. I think the world would be a better place and be a lot more civil towards one another when you're on the other end of someone's you know bad emotional day.
Yeah, 100%. And in fact, I think one of the greatest industries for developing young men and women is the door-to-door space. If you go knock doors, like even a church mission for us, LDS and Mormon people, they go serve 2 years, and you talk about a tough road and rejection and dealing with different personalities and conflict resolution and being stuck with a companion that you maybe don't like or resonate with, and understanding how to manage and work difficult personalities. Man, that door-to-door sales industry is not for the weak, and it develops some really strong men and women. I would put that in the same category of like either doing military service or combat sports, or sales retail. I mean, you just gain a different level of respect, for those people that do a service industry. Go be a server for 2 years, and see how thick-skinned you get and how tolerant you get of just rude and ignorant people. I think that would be another category, that we you wish that people would just go do an experience. But hey, you can't force anybody to do anything, and we live in a soft, pathetic time in history.
But when you run for office, I want to be on your team.
I'll leave that to much smarter men than I am. I'd love to see someone like Jocko or Eddie Frisell or something just take it on and run with it, and just have the balls to make the right decisions and not be, skewed by money and politics.
Amen.
Amen. You mentioned Uriah Faber, and Rich mentioned the Buttery Bros before, and Uriah was on that clip with the Buttery Bros, and I believe Rich Roll has come out to help you for some things. And when you look at the footage of whether it be the 50, whether it be the 100, you have an epic community. You have people travel from all around to come be a part of your community. What's the secret? Well, what's the secret to building such an epic community where you like have some of the coolest people coming out to help you, and you have hundreds of people day in and day out? Well, what's the secret to that?
Yeah, great question. And I think it's just at the end of the day, caring about other people and trying to bring community together, and understanding that nothing great is ever accomplished on our own. I'll say it till I'm dead. I didn't do this. We did it. I'm not the Iron Cowboy. We are the Iron Cowboy. And our team's willingness to intentionally suffer gives people hope. And that's why we show up every single day and invite the community to come do it, because as a community, we develop hope, and we develop and start to see a path and a way through to overcome anxiety and depression. You're not going to do it on your own. And to me, that's why, frankly, go back to the beginning of this conversation, I struggle with someone like David Goggins, where he says you have to be a recluse, you have to do it on your own if you want to be the best. I don't believe that. I believe we become better together. And I'm not great at everything, but I'll put people on my team that are great, and I will reach way higher levels than I ever would if I tried to do this pursuit on my own. I don't think I could have done it without my family. I don't think I could have done it without the wingman. I don't think I could have done it without the community coming out and rallying myself. Now, am I great at being alone? Yeah. Am I 1,000% comfortable with the conversation I have with myself? 100%. Yeah. Am I great at self-soothing? Yes. But do I dismiss the impacts of community and the fact that I'm actually been given a gift to suffer intentionally to give other people hope? 100%. I'll never turn a blind eye to that. And to me, that's where the satisfaction comes in. This would have been a pointless pursuit if I did all this on my own. Like, for what? Who cares? I don't want to be known for the 50, the 100. I want to be known for helping people get out of their own way, start winning the conversations with themselves, to overcome that anxiety and depression, to have that belief system that they are invincible, they can do anything, that we don't have limits on it, that they're all self-imposed. Like, that's the message we're trying to get, is for people to get out of their own way so that they can be successful. And it's only through community. It's why we started the Iron Grit experiences. It's why we created this mastermind. It's not because I think I'm smarter than anybody. It's because I think I have things to learn from anybody that joins our mastermind. I believe I have experience that we can collaborate on and become better people as a community. That's the whole point. That's why we did it, to bring closer together. And if we learned anything from the pandemic, it's that we need each other. It's that we are tribal by nature, and that we will thrive the more we get together and try to conquer.
James, you got me fired up
Yeah,
right
you
now,
got
man.
me fired up.
And I think you summed it up perfect. I am not the Iron Cowboy. We are the Iron Cowboy. I can see that you do these things for things outside of you, bigger than you. And I almost feel that the reason you can get these impossible tasks done is because you're doing it for something bigger than yourself.
Yeah, there's a difference between being rich and being wealthy. And if you're trying to be rich, you're just in the pursuit of money. To me, and my belief system is, I become wealthy once I'm financially free. I have a strong marriage. I have a great family unit, and I'm bringing community together. That's the moment where I'm at, where I become wealthy. And I take all dollars and cents off the table. And our team's only objective is, how many people can we help get out of their own way? And as a byproduct, we're going to make money. But that's not our focus. Our focus is on community and helping people. And every single year, we're like, okay, how many people can we help get out of their own way? I don't care what the dollar amount is. How many people can I help? And if that's the objective, dude, I win no matter what the dollar amount is.
James,
Great.
go ahead, Jim.
Go. You said you had one more. Go.
Yeah, I had one that I wanted to ask you, but I feel like this is more impactful for me. I have a 10-year veteran special education teacher, and I heard you talk about your experience at the Chicago Marathon, where you guided a Down syndrome gentleman. I was wondering if you could maybe talk about that experience and how that all came about, and for someone like me who that resonates with, how potentially get involved with stuff like that.
Yeah, I've had two really amazing experiences in my career. And in 2012, during that world record, race 27 of 30, I had an opportunity to pull a young man named Dayton, who has cerebral palsy, through the entire full distance triathlon. And so many amazing lessons. I share that story from stage every time I speak. I do 80 events a year. And it is the most impactful story that I tell. And an experience, even over a decade later, that I still deeply resonate with. And then most recently, I had an opportunity to run and guide a young man named Chris Nikic, who was the first Down syndrome to do a full distance triathlon. And then at the Chicago Marathon, he was the first Downs to do all of the world marathons successfully. And it just proves that there's no limit to what we can do, and it's all self-imposed. And in fact, I'm going to have an opportunity to guide Chris through the Kona Ironman World Championships in October of this year, and I'm so excited to be able to do that and share that day and that moment with him. Um, and it always brings me full circle and helps me recognize I don't have to do these things. I get to do these things. And even that day with Dayton, Dayton can't ride. Dayton can't ride a bike. Dayton can't run, and I get to, and that's really what kept me going every single day. And then just the opportunity with Chris. So I got to meet Chris because I saw that he was the first Downs to do an Ironman, and we have a podcast called The Grit Show, and I brought him and his dad onto the podcast, and his dad proceeded to tell me that they sat down as a family and watched our documentary. And Chris said, dude, if he can do 50, why can't I do one? And it was just this amazing moment that I was having, that I was like, man, we truly have no idea the impact that we have. And when we're quitting on ourselves and our journey, we're not just quitting on ourselves, we're quitting on a possible legacy, because we truly have no idea that ripple effect. And had I quit on the 50, the documentary doesn't get done. Chris doesn't watch it with his family, and he's gone on to inspire thousands of people in this space. And they're like, well, if Chris can do it, I can do it, right? And so it's just been this kind of full circle for me. And really one of the biggest reasons why I continue to show up and do what I do, because we have no idea who's watching, whether it's our kids or complete strangers or even ourselves. And quitting is just not an option, because I always think in my mind, who am I missing the opportunity to impact if I quit today? And that keeps me to show up every single day. And now I got to guide Chris through Chicago, and full circle, we're going to do an Ironman together. And to me, that's just so poetic, that we didn't quit, and it fired him up, and he's going to change people's lives, and now we get to do it together. That's just so cool to me.
I know a podcast I'm listening on my way to work tomorrow.
You may want to watch that one because he's hard to understand, and my daughter had to put subtitles to it.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
But yeah, man, it's a great listen. The other one too is Lucy Charles. I had her on my podcast, and she'd come second place in Kona like 3 or 4 times, and then just this year she won the world championships. And so to me, her story is incredible, because she was runner up so many times, and a lot of people just would have went, it's just not in the cards for me to win this thing. And she lost to a different girl every time. And so it wasn't like there was just this phenom that showed up and commanded the space, which arguably Daniela Reef did. But then Lucy Charles just said, you know what, this is my destiny. I'm going to keep showing up. I'm going to keep chipping away at this thing. And so her podcast is great. And I'd love to get her back on the podcast, or she'd be a great guest for you guys too. Because she went on after placing second so many times to finally becoming the champion of the world.
I'll check that one out tomorrow morning. Thank you.
Yeah, man.
James, you mentioned doing a triathlon with Chris coming up here. Do you have any endeavors that you want to talk about? Let the fans of Airey Bros Radio know what we can watch you do this up and coming year.
Yeah, absolutely. Tune into Iron Cowboy James. It's going to be a big year for me. I finally got to a place where I'm fully recovered from the 50, from the 100, both physically, both mentally. And this year I want to showcase some athleticism and some speed. Go back to my roots when I started so many years ago. A lot of people just know me as this dude that can suffer relentlessly, but haven't seen me race. And I'm excited to get back to that. I still think my fastest races are in me. I'm turning 48 this year. I'm going to go sub 3 in the New York City Marathon in November. In March, I'm doing the toughest mountain bike race in the world. It's called the Cape Epic. It's in South Africa, 8 days of grueling terrain, done with a partner. And then come race me this summer at our race in Utah called Starvation. It's the only U.S. qualifier for the World Championships in Norway, called Norseman. And you can go to starvationxtry.com and sign up. And any of your listeners, just put in the code Iron Cowboy 20, give you 20% discount code to come toe the line with me in arguably one of the hardest full distance races in the world. I challenge you to come get on the start line with me.
And that's 140.6 distance?
140.6.
Okay. You ever think about doing an ultra?
In fact, I just told my friend in 2025 I'm going to do the Wasatch 100.
Let's go.
I did. I've run 235 before. I ran across Greece. We did a big fundraiser with Navy SEALs, and that was a really cool experience. I've biked across the country. I've done 400 miles straight on a bike before. But I've done Leadville 100 on a bike. But this year I'm really focusing on the run. Like I said, I want to go sub 3 in New York at the end of this year. And that'll set me up for what I believe will be my first go at the Wasatch 100 here in Utah.
What's your marathon PR, if you don't mind me asking?
3:14.
Okay.
But I've never
That's off the
trained.
bike.
Yeah,
Yeah.
off the bike, and I've never trained just to do a marathon. And so this year my focus is going to be getting that sub 3 in New York, and then I'll do Boston in 2025.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive, sir. And I've only beat Rich once in a foot race, and it was because he rode 75 miles on his bike prior, but I'll still take that win.
You should every time.
James, we have 4 questions that we ask all our guests
Okay.
at the end of every podcast. We call it the final 4. Are you a coffee drinker?
I've never had coffee.
All right, respect.
I've actually never had alcohol.
Respect. Do you consume caffeine?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll do about 200 milligrams in the morning.
Are you doing energy drinks or are you doing powder? What's your
Yeah,
intake?
I do like a pre-workout, a slow release. I use First Form. It's called Megawatt.
Okay, cool. James, do you have any daily practices or rituals that you should do on a regular basis to show up as the strongest version of the Iron Cowboy?
Yeah, I actually have a pretty intense morning routine that I do every single day. It's going to involve obviously a workout. It's going to involve some cold therapy, cold plunging. There's going to be meditation, mindfulness practice that goes on. There's going to be connection to the earth. There's going to be some yoga and respect to my body in terms of flexibility. Especially as I age, I understand the importance of it. I'll always do some type of red light therapy. I'm just huge on recovery. And the biggest thing I focus on is my sleep. I try to get 8 to 10 hours a night. I disagree with any of the influencers today that are like, you got to wake up at 4:30 in the morning. You got to grind it on both ends. I'm at the point in my life where I don't have to do that. I can still get it done. I can sleep in. I respect that part of it. And I'm not going to have a nervous breakdown. And I'm going to live a lot longer than a lot of those guys. You've got to respect your sleep.
No doubt. Curious, do you do your cold therapy before or after your workout?
I try to do it's the least favorite moment of my day. I dread it every single day. And so I try to do it first thing just to get it off my plate.
That's what I've been experimenting with lately, is doing that and then going out and using the workout to warm myself back up.
Yeah, it's a great way to do it. And so I'll just do 3 minutes before my morning run, my 6 miles. I try to run every single morning just in a fasted state. And so I'll do the cold plunge, go on a 6 mile zone 1 run, and then do my workouts for performance.
Awesome.
James, what are you listening to right now? Music, podcasts, audiobooks? Are you reading anything?
Yeah, I start every single year reading Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. It's just an incredible read. It recenters me, it regrounds me, it brings gratitude to the forefront. And it also helps me recognize every single year that I get to choose how I react. And the things that are happening to me are just happening to me. And then I get to choose how I navigate it. And Man's Search for Meaning is the ultimate example of that. And if you're not familiar with it, it's about a gentleman who was in the Nazi concentration camps. He's a survivor. And he could tell the moment that somebody lost hope because they died. And to me, that's hope is life. And that's why we're calling our book Iron Hope. Because I believe that as a culture and a society, we've lost hope and we've lost direction. And so I read that book every single year to kick off my year. We actually do a free book club. And anybody that wants to go to ironcowboy.com, just click on free book club. And every month we're doing a different book.
Cool. James, last one we got for you. Do you have a guilty pleasure or guilty pleasures? It could be food, it could be like you said, your WWE following, the old school wrestling. Are you a Swiftie?
Man, I love watching sports, and I don't know that it's a vice or whatnot. It does consume a big bulk of my time, but I draw inspiration and motivation watching a lot of these superstars do it at such a high level for a long period of time. Could I maybe get more done if I didn't consume that? Probably, but I love it, and I think in life we should all have leisure activities or pleasures that just are purposely for that leisure and pleasure. I love to golf. I spend a lot of time doing it. And I think it's important for me, my mental health and just grounding and doing an activity that I can forget about everything else in the world. And so I'm pretty balanced. I spend a lot of time with my family. I dedicate a lot of time to work and physical development, personal development. But yeah, I just love watching and consuming sports.
So, question for you. Have you ever done speed golf?
I haven't. In fact, I was biking the other day, and my buddy was like, "Hey, you know what? I'm a member of the club here, and we every morning we go down and we run the course and play." And I'm like, I don't want to do that because I really enjoy golf, and I don't particularly love running, and so like I want to keep them bad boys separate, and uh, and I just want to enjoy the game when I'm playing it and check out of kind of the everyday grind.
All right. And being in Utah, did you ever get a chance to play golf with Carl Meltzer?
I have not played with Carl.
Okay.
Actually, we've never even crossed paths.
Okay.
Uh, is he a big golfer?
Yeah, he's a big golfer and he's also big into or was big into the speed golf.
Oh, dude, we should connect. I should reach out to him on social media and see if he at least wants to go play a round or two.
Yeah. And then I'm curious, I know you've mentioned you're a big fan of LeBron, so I'm curious, what's your NBA team? And what you see the football helmet? Are you an NFL fan? Do you have a team?
Yeah, this actually is Minnesota Vikings. I've spoken to the team, and so they gave me this really cool gift. The whole team signed it. I've spoken now to five or six NFL teams. I grew up in Canada, so really don't have a team. I loved the culture in Minnesota. I thought Pittsburgh really had a great culture there too. And so if I'm cheering for someone and they're in the game, then it'll be one of those two teams. And a big NBA guy. In fact, we're going to LA to for my daughter's wedding, and the day before the wedding, we're going to catch a Lakers Clippers game. Just all of us are just going to go have some fun. I'm more a fan of greatness. And dude, I don't care about the GOAT conversation. I loved watching LeBron. I love watching LeBron. I loved watching Jordan. I loved watching Kobe. Steph Curry's like they're great players. And I think we're just doing a disservice and having a pointless conversation in terms of the GOAT. I just love watching great players. I love great matchups. I love watching them getting pushed. I know there was a lot of like people making fun of the in-season tournament this year. Dude, it brought out some incredible basketball in October, November that we've never seen before. And so I just love competition and I love watching great players do it for a long period of time.
That said, are you a Jazz fan?
I went to the Jazz game this week. I'm not necessarily a Jazz fan. Probably because we don't have any great players, and it's hard. I want to watch greatness, and there's not a lot of greatness happening. We seem to be in this perpetual phase of rebuilding. Maybe this is the time when we actually do it, but it's really hard for us to keep superstars. We keep giving them away. And so I go there and it's fun and my kids love it and it's great atmosphere. Anything live sports is a lot of fun, but 10 times out of 10 I'd rather go to an NHL game.
Okay, cool. James, it's been an honor and a pleasure connecting with you tonight. I'm super motivated right now, and yeah, I really do appreciate your time and taking the time out of your day and spending the first of the new year with us. So thank you very much.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, boys. Anything I can do for you guys, just let me know. We're open. We're an open book here. We're huge on community and helping other people win. In fact, if you go to our website, ironcowboy.com, we'll coach you for free. We'll give you a sprint program. We'll give you an Olympic program. We'll give you 5K, 10K, whatever it is. and we've just created this community of trying to help people. We've got the free book club. There's obviously services that we do for charge, but at the end of the day, we want to see people win. And this is a difficult landscape to navigate successfully. And there's a lot of misinformation out there and good resources. And so we hopefully we can be a corner post for a lot of people that are new to the sport and want a reliable source. And we're here to see you win.
Awesome. We'll put all that stuff in the show notes for you as well too. So we'll get the word out for you. We'll get you that Airey Bros bump. Not that you need it.
Awesome, man. Well, great to meet you guys. Happy holidays to everybody listening, and hopefully 2024 is your most amazing year yet.
Thank you, James.
Awesome. Thank
Appreciate
you. Happy
you.
New Year, sir.
Have a great night.
Awesome, guys. Thank you.